thing I want to add on to, I guess, with the manipulation is a lot of people ask about like the threats, like how severely. It wasn't just verbal threats. Like, you know, you get a nice little beating, I'll say, right? Just putting it in rose-colored
So
glasses.
he pretty much physically abused you or
Yeah,
hurt
like
you.
if you don't know, not him,
Okay.
the ones in the appointment.
Uh,
He was very much quiet one, and then one of his other, I'll say associates, right? Like it was three of them. He was my boyfriend, and then the other two were always with him to handle all the things. And one of them would be the aggressor. And I think that I know that that had a play as well, because it's like, how far is this gonna go? Like this time it was just a slap, next time it's this, and then, you know, how much further am I gonna push this? And the one time I didn't comply because my mom was in the hospital, I lied and said I was gonna go. They showed up and they
all right, all right. Welcome back to Ovaya Inspiración. It is a beautiful Monday night here in South Florida. I feel sorry for you people up North Florida and just the northern states because you are freezing up there. I know in my hometown it's like in the 30s right now, probably 40s back in Jersey. And right now we have it good. We have it like, I don't know, maybe it's like 70. Um, that's the weather I would love to have in Florida every single day. But anyways, welcome back. Today we have a very special guest, interesting story that you will hear. Just to let you know, there'll be a trigger warning because this is a story of a survivor of sex trafficking as a young girl here in Miami. And if there's any time that you need to step out, please do so. I don't know the full story, so I don't know exactly what she'll be sharing, but I know some parts of it. But this is good, and for you guys to be aware of what's out there. So I am going to bring Gloria. What's up, Gloria?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good, good.
Good, good.
Happy to be here.
Yes. And we got to formally meet last Friday.
Yes, yes.
Because the first time I saw you was last January
Mhm.
at an event for the human anti-human trafficking awareness with Victor and I forgot the other lady's name. I think she works in the police department. There was a
Yeah.
panelist. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was on a panelist, and I got to hear a little bit of your story and whatnot. And the funny thing is that over the summer, because you were at a spot where where my company where I work for, we have summer camp
Mhm.
at the Miramar Cultural Center, the multiplex. I forgot how you say it. And I was looking on Facebook, on Instagram one day, and I see that you were there talking to, I guess, the volunteers, like the young ones. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she was there. Like I've been trying to get a hold of you for a long time. But I found you, I
Yeah,
found you on Instagram and messaged you and whatnot. So
yeah.
we're here now. And we were at an event on Friday night, which was so awesome involving arts. So that's really, really good. So I'm glad to have you on my channel.
Happy to
So
be here.
just tell me or tell us a little bit about yourself, your
Mhm.
background, your childhood, where you're from, because I know you're Latina, so your
I
last name
am.
says it all.
I am. My whole name, huh?
Right.
Um, yeah, so my name is Gloria Martinez. I am a social worker by trade. I'm currently working on my doctorate in social work just to top it off, right? Do it all. But I am Latina. I was born in Puerto Rico. My dad was Puerto Rican. My mom's Venezuelan. So it's one crazy mix. And I really grew up, I like to say everywhere, but mostly Miami. My dad worked for the government, the federal
Mm.
government. So to move up in rank, he had to move every 9 months, dude. So I've lived in Puerto Rico, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania,
New Hampshire.
Arizona,
What the
New
heck?
York. So I lived everywhere.
Wow. I used to go to New Hampshire a lot in my teen years in the summertime because my cousins, my Dominican cousins, dark skinned Dominican cousins used to live out there. That's where
Yeah,
their childhood was.
yeah.
And I'm like, New Hampshire. I'm like, what in the world? But
Mountains and snow. That's what you get. That's here.
and they used to get a lot of snow.
Yeah,
That's all I know.
yeah.
Wow.
So
So you were all over the place. Do you have any siblings?
I do. So I have one brother. His name is Carlos, but I have three of his best friends that were raised along with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they are, I mean, blood couldn't make us any closer. They are definitely my brothers. And they're all older. I'm the baby. So for the longest, people referred to me as little sister because the youngest one is 7 years older than me. So they're
Oh,
all
wow.
pretty much
Wow.
older than me.
Well,
Yeah.
we're the same. I'm the youngest of my two brothers.
A little baby.
Yeah, we're the baby of the house.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Worked out.
So you pretty much you're here in Miami just like me.
Yeah.
Um, we would love to know your story. You have a traumatic story just like many others. Um, but I guess start wherever you want to start from.
Thanks. So yeah, like you mentioned, I am a survivor of sex trafficking here in Miami. I was raised from fifth grade on in Cutler Bay, used to be known Cutler Ridge, right? So I went to fifth grade and then up from there. And when I was in fifth grade, I begged my dad, I was like, please don't move me anymore, dude.
Mm,
Like, we lived in two other places in Florida. We lived in Pembroke Pines, no, three Pembroke Pines, Sunrise, and Weston, until we finally came to Miami. And I was like, okay, please, like, yeah, basta. That means enough. All right, like, just no more. And yeah, and so he was like, okay, so he decided to stay in Miami. He stopped looking for promotions. He just kind of let us be. And my brother and his friends were always caught up in some trouble. So Miami in the early 2000s, right? Lots of raves going on, lots of ecstasy,
mm,
right? This was before Molly. This was when there was just ecstasy, right?
right.
Lots of cocaine. We're in cocaine capital, right? And so my brothers really got caught up into the party lifestyle. Um, Neither one of them, thankfully, had any long-term addictions. I think they just played with it while they were in that party kind of lifestyle that was in. And so my parents were really focused on my brother and making sure that he was not getting any trouble, or if he was getting trying to get him out or get him some
Mm,
help. And I was kind of left to run free.
mm,
And that's kind of where everything starts for me,
mm.
because I've had to look back, right, at that mentality back then. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. I didn't have a beeper, right? This was even
Beeper. Oh, I
before.
had one of those.
But that came out years later, right? But even then, I never had one. I came home when the night, the not the light nights, the street lights came on, right?
Yeah.
And then even in Miami, I challenged that, and I was like, well, what's the law say? And it said 11 p.m. So I told my
Oh boy.
parents, I was like, I'm good till 11. Law says so, right? And being a daughter of law enforcement, right, of a
Mm,
federal employee, I was like, that's your law. So your law says I can stay out until 11. So whatever. So I started making friends. I was in middle school. And I really wanted, like most kids, I think like every kid, just to like be in the popular crowd and hang out
mm,
with the popular kids. And I found myself honestly going towards the music I liked, which was like punk rock.
mm,
And I quickly found out in sixth grade that that wasn't what boys wanted. Boys did not want your hair to be all different shades of the rainbow with the stainless steel thick necklaces, right?
right.
And the pants that I could fit like four people in. It's not what they wanted, right? Just being honest. And so I started to gravitate to the crowd that wore the Brazilian jeans and the tight
Mm,
clothes, and their hair was gelled and big hoop earrings, right? My chongalicious lifestyle. And with that came a different group of friends. And one of my really good friends at the time had an older boyfriend. I went to go hang out with her. One of the nights she was like, just come, just come. And she made sure I looked the part,
mm.
right? So we used to wear Chinese slippers back then. Do you remember those at the dollar
Yes,
store?
I remember those.
Right. So for those of you that don't, it was like a netted shoe that had like little Chinese flowers on it, and they were all one color. It was like all bright red or highlighter
Mhm.
yellow or whatever. So those and a little jean skirt and a blue shirt, and she introduced me to her friends, her no, her boyfriend's friend, sorry.
Mm.
And man, I thought he looked like Ken from Ken and Barbie. He had blonde hair with like a wave in the front and like blue eyes, light skin, and he had tattoos. And I was like, oh man, hot, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that is mine. And yeah, I didn't really think much of it, right? Like I had seen him in middle school when I was getting out one day that she was walking with him and his and her boyfriend. And then that night I was like, like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh,
Mm.
come on, come on. So when I went, it was definitely set up strategically. Like the
Mhm.
boys had gone into the pool area, like in a gated community. They didn't have a key, so they like, credit card it.
Oh wow.
We're not going to give that description on the podcast. Don't worry. We're not going to teach people how to do this, but they got into the pool and they set up just two chairs and they were on them and there was no other chairs to be found, like as if these two had gone around the whole pool, stacked them up and freaking hid them, like there was
Wow.
no other chair.
Mhm.
And so we sat, each one on their laps, and it just turned into, this is what I need to do to be part of the cool crowd, and maybe he does like me, right?
Mhm.
And quickly, my friend and her boyfriend left, and it was just me and him there. And we just had conversation. And like, I thought got to know each other, right? I was 12, and he was 16. And every part of that relationship, I
Mhm.
thought was like a movie, right? Like, wow, like now we're going to the park and I get to sneak out of the house like the girls in the movies do. And this is so cool. And we would go to the beach and just do everything that for a 12-year-old seemed like like I hit the jackpot. I
Mm.
am, the movie star and a rom-com, and I am living my best life here in Miami, right? Embracing the culture that I was just getting to know. Cause like I just told you, I had older brothers, but they didn't show me their lifestyle,
Right.
right? I knew that they were getting into some trouble. I didn't know what the heck that was
Mm.
until much later. And so Miami was something I was like, wow, like there's so much here in the city. And our culture in Miami is you stay out late, you party hard, right?
Mhm.
You engage in whatever everyone else is engaging in, you drink. And, and after you go to Ray's Pizza at like 6 a.m. And, get some sleep and do it all over again. And so he really did a good job in introducing me to that. He then came around my family, right, as if he was legit my boyfriend. We would play Mario Kart in my living room, and we would go in the pool and he would be there while my dad was barbecuing. And my dad called him the Miami Herald because he had so many
Mm.
tattoos. And, they knew how old he was and how
Yeah.
old I was. Um,
So pause for a second.
yeah, go ahead. That's why.
So I remember you sharing that the first time I saw you, and the thought that came to my mind, and maybe because it's different generations, I don't know, but in my mind, I'm like, I can't picture myself having my 12-year-old daughter dating a 16. Like I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out like. I guess was that an okay thing for your parents, or is it something that they just like? I don't know. I don't know. What was your thoughts about that later on? Your parents allowing you to have a 16-year-old boyfriend, and you're not even. I mean, maybe you did hit puberty, but still, you're 12 years old.
All right, so let's give you the before thinking and the now thinking, right? Because now I'm a mom.
Okay.
But before I was like, okay, I need to get dad to love him, right? Um, my dad was really particular about certain things. Like nobody could come in the house with a wife beater on. It was
Mm.
not happening. He would tell you to take your ass back home and get some clothes on and then come back. Swear. No socks and slides were allowed in my house. That was a big no. Like you're
Mm.
not allowed to step foot in the house, turn back around. So there was specific things. So I made sure that he came over the first time on a good day. So dad was in a good mood, right? Not that he was an angry person, just
Right.
very stressful job, right?
Mhm.
And like life. So made sure, his friends were gonna come over or something. He was barbecuing, the music was on, it was all good. First. And I was really good at playing I'm the baby card,
Mm.
right? My brother is fucking up all the sorry. Am I allowed to curse on here? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay. So my brother's messing up all the time, right? And I'm the good one. I'm the baby. So like please like my friends. And you want me to be here instead of going out. So I'm bringing my friends here. Please be nice.
Mhm.
Right? I was really good at playing that card. And I really made sure that as much as he could cover up the tattoos, he would.
Mm.
And he was still a minor and we were in the house. So maybe, I don't know, I don't know. He thought that was a better option than me just running around somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he did try and get to know him too. Like he knew that his mom was a teacher for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. He knew that he came from a single parent household. He knew where he lived, which was in the neighborhood next door.
Mhm.
So, he knew that he was introduced with my friends. So it was that. Now thinking, I have the same thinking you do. How the heck are we allowing 12 and 16? I don't get it.
Mm.
Um, I would never allow that now with three daughters, but I'm biased. So
Right.
yeah, I would never.
And so, wow. Okay. So, 12 years old, 16 years old.
Yeah.
You have three daughters now. So, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, there's no way you're going to have a boy. First of all, there's no way you should be in a relationship, period. You're only 12 years old. And
Mhm.
definitely not somebody of that age.
Yeah.
Like, something is wrong with that, you know?
Yeah. And
And
I
go ahead.
think too, like, yo soy una hija de vejez, right? So for those that don't speak Spanish, right? Like I'm a child of elder parents. They had me in their 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And being
Same
the
thing with my father.
baby,
Mm-hmm.
you get a little bit more wiggle room there. It's just for real. You do.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. And back then was, I guess, the resources of, I guess, knowing what human trafficking was and all that. That's not, and all these red flags. I don't. Back then, it was not like today, where there's education on what to look for. Back then, it was just whatever you raise your daughter or son, in the best of your knowledge, and do what you got to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and like they really did a good job. They put me in self-defense really early on. I think I was like 7 when I was taking self-defense classes. Just the first time, like he had
Mhm.
that as a constant. Like I was constantly in self-defense classes and I had, I was not scared to say how I felt. We'll just put
Mm.
it that way. So,
Okay.
so I think he saw that, I didn't really take much crap.
Mm.
So he didn't, I don't think they saw like that being an issue, but he worked for the government. So I don't know, but me and
Right.
the laws didn't come into effect until much later. So,
Right.
but,
So, so they win. They pretty much got used to him as that he kept going over the house.
yeah,
They pretty much liked him after a while,
yeah,
but there was more hidden stuff that they don't know about. So continue.
yeah. All right. So, just everything was really good. I thought how it was supposed to be. And there came a point where he started asking me to do favors.
Mm,
Now by then I need to, clarify that this was my first relationship as well. So there was a lot, like my first real one, especially with an older guy. So I guess I thought it was obviously thought that it was something way more serious than just a kid relationship.
mm,
And he started asking me for favors. So sometimes it would be like for money. And then if I didn't have it, we'd be like, okay, well, why don't we just go here? Just be the lookout. I'll be right back. And the first couple times I had no idea. I thought he was like meeting a friend behind the house or on the side of the house. Um, until one time he was like he got caught for golf clubs, for stealing golf clubs.
hmm.
And I was like, "Why would you do that?" And he was like, "I needed money." And I was like, "Why didn't you just go to your friend's house in one of those houses that you've taken me to?" And he's like, "You dummy. Like,
Mhm.
this is what I do, right? For him, it was hit a lick, right? I don't know if that's how people still say it now, but that's how he referred to it. I love how I'm very white when I say that. It can't even come out like how he did it, but that's what it was. For him, it was, I'm gonna go hit a lick at that point because now I understood what it was. I was like, okay. Then after that, it was, selling drugs,
Mm.
passing drugs, which obviously I knew what that was. Um, but he always played the story of like, I'm down and out. It's just me and my mom. I gotta help provide. Like, I just don't have.
Mm.
And so that's also why I brought him to the house a lot because my dad was always cooking. We always had a ton of snacks. Like, I came up pretty privileged, that I didn't really have to need for those kinds of things. And then at one point we went back to like the pool setting. We were always
Mhm.
kind of in that as a kid. You really don't have many places to go until you turned 18, right? But the first time he kind of took me to the pool and there was one chair and then he was like, I'll be back in a little bit. And he just left and his friend like came out from the bushes and sat in the chair and I was like, what the heck is going
That's
on?
strange.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? So I like went to go chase him and he was like, no, just stay. I'll be back in a little bit. Just do what he says. And I
Mhm.
was like, all right. I meant like, I thought he meant like, stay put, don't come chasing after me kind of thing. But no, it wasn't that. And his friend was definitely coached or had this down packed on how to calm me down and try and make
Mm.
me feel he like he had given me permission. Like
Hmm.
my boyfriend had given me permission. He knew what was going to be asked of me and I needed to do it before he came back or he was going to be upset. And so yeah, and so at that point it was kind of like, okay, I can't get out of here, right? Because
Mhm.
there's one guy here making sure I don't leave. When my boyfriend left, he closed the gate all the way, and I didn't know how to do a credit card thing, right? So I physically couldn't even get out of there unless I found more chairs or like moved a table to the fence and hopped over it.
Hmm.
Because I don't know if you remember the pool community, they usually have like one straight pole up and down. They're not like the chain link fence,
Yeah.
it's just a white pole. And so you can't get out of that. And so I was stuck. And I did after a while, I will say at least 10 minutes of like questioning and trying to like finesse my way out. It felt like way more, but it was probably like 15 minutes. I finally gave in. When he came back to pick me up, it was thank you so much. What do you want to do? I'll take you wherever you want. It was
Mhm.
like because I did as asked, and now I was treated even better. Now
Mm.
we could do even more things. Now he would take me even more places. Now I was even more important. Um, and so it was a lot of that until it was that he could drive or he got his hands on a car. And so
Mm.
then it was further places. Or when he turned, a certain age, he was able to get hotel rooms.
Mm.
He had a fake ID after a little bit. And yeah, it just got really, really ugly. That first guy and one of his other friends were like his two ring men. So I was asked often to bring friends to hang out with them, to entertain them.
Mhm.
I thought we would just all chill, right? And then if everyone likes each other, they kind of go their own way.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I didn't really realize what was being asked of me. I never saw him get anything in return until I was about 17
Mhm.
when I finally saw like some money come out of the handshake that he did with his friends.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
So, with all of that that's going on, still as a teenage girl, like, are you scared? And even though you're still with him and doing whatever it is, in the back of your mind, are you scared? Are you finding a way to escape, or you thinking about your parents? Should I tell them? Like, what's going through your mind and all of that?
All the things. I knew I couldn't tell my parents because I was scared my mom would just have a heart attack. She has MS. She's had it my whole life. And during this time, she was having seizures and in and out of the hospital, and there was a bunch going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to do that. I knew my dad would literally murder them. Literally, I feel that wholeheartedly. Um, and he worked for the government, and so that's something that my boyfriend would manipulate me to thinking like, you are going to be the laughing stock of your father's friends. He
Hmm.
is going to end up in jail if he comes after me, you know that. And what kind of a fed has a daughter like you, and
Mm.
different things like that. He knew my mom was disabled, so he was like, yeah, go ahead and tell her, you want to just offer, right? Because, like I said, she was already having issues. So he was like, one more thing, and you're going to be the one that sets it off. And then my brothers were doing their own thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like I had three overprotective brothers that were looking at when I came home and who I was with and who I was dating. They were rarely ever home.
Hmm. Interesting. So
Yeah.
pretty much he was guilt tripping you, manipulating you,
Yeah.
and he was winning the whole time.
Yeah.
Because you didn't tell your parents. You continued with him and whatnot, which is a sad thing. And he played what he pretty much made himself the narcissist, right? It
Yeah.
was all about him, gaslighting you, all of that stuff. And he got what he wanted for that time period.
Yeah.
Um, so while all of that is happening, and this is all within Color Bay, right?
Yeah, we the most we went out to were like the beach or the hourly motels. We didn't go far. Thank God we
Hmm.
didn't have social media back then. So it was
Yeah.
really like, unfortunately, it was a word of mouth thing. It was like he
Mm,
would tell his friends that had money, and then those friends would tell other friends that had money, and then it would just like go that way. Unless we were out somewhere, right? Like if we were at a club or out at a party, then it was an opportunity, I guess, for him to make some money he didn't think he was gonna make. Um, the thing I want to add on to, I guess, with the manipulation is a lot of people ask about like the threats, like how severely. It wasn't just verbal threats. Like,
mm.
you get a nice little beating, I'll say, right? Just putting it in rose colored
So he
glasses.
pretty much physically abused you or
Yeah,
hurt
like
you.
if you don't know, not him,
Oh, okay.
the ones in the appointment.
Ah.
He was a very much quiet one, and then one of his other, I'll say, associates, right? Like it was three of them. He was my boyfriend, and then the other two were always with him to handle all the things.
Mm,
And one of them would be the aggressor, and I think that I know that that had a play as well, because it's like, how far is this going to go? Like this time it was just a slap, next time it's this, and then how much further am I going to push this? And the one time I didn't comply because my
mhm.
mom was in the hospital, I lied and said I was going to go. They showed up and they ransacked my house. They
Wow.
stole everything in my parents' safe,
No
including
way.
family jewelry,
What?
my mother's wedding rings. Like there's so many things that they held true that day. They ransacked my house.
So what happened when your parents saw that things were empty? Like what happened?
So I told them I was staying at a friend's house, and when they got home, they called 911 and said that
Mm.
someone had broken in.
But
Um,
you knew exactly what it was or
yep,
who it was.
yep.
Wow.
He
Wow.
made sure to come that day and the day after
Hmm.
to make sure that I wasn't saying anything and that he was saving face.
That's
Right?
that.
His prints were there. He's
Mm.
always there.
That's just thinking about that as a as a female, right? Biologically speaking, and just as a whole, more, I guess, vulnerable and physically weaker than men, so they would easily manipulate you, easily make threats, so that they can make you scared and not do or say anything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. But just thinking about that, I did not know that part when I first heard your story. I don't remember if you mentioned that, but I'm like, dang,
Yeah.
they literally robbed your house and you know exactly who it was, but you were just scared. You
Yeah,
probably.
and I had a friend there with me that day while they were doing this, like a girlfriend, and we still keep in touch from time to time, I'll say.
Mm,
But we're not as close as we used to be. And I just remember like wanting to scream, like, how do you not see my eyeballs telling you that this is not okay and you should do something? I can't do something, but you can, right? Like they're
mm,
not holding you here, they're holding me here. Like get the hell out of here and go call for help. And I actually finally did. I was actually able to get outside of my house for a quick second on
mhm,
my big old Nokia, and I called my boyfriend at the time. And I know this sounds funny, but this is what my trafficker required for no really. He required me to have relationships in school and that my friends knew instead of him. My family could only know that he was my
mm,
boyfriend. Like my friends had to think that I was dating whoever, or at school I had to maintain a boyfriend so that it was always I mean, not always, it was never an issue, right? Of like, but aren't you dating that older guy? And haven't you guys been together for so long, right? He wanted me to keep face and then still find out like where the parties were and who was doing what,
mm.
and stay in that instead of shoot away because I had a long term boyfriend. So I called my little wannabe boyfriend at the time, who was actually living like 4 houses down from me.
Mhm.
And he came with one of his best friends who was, I think, the same age as my trafficker. And they came in with bats,
What in the world?
with like baseball bats, baseball bats and a pool stick, I think. And they were like, that's it. Like, you guys are done. Like, get the heck out of here. And they had like a face off
Mhm.
in front of my house. Um, and they stayed until the guys picked up everything they wanted and got the hell out of there.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So your trafficker, what was his childhood like? What was his background?
So he was white, Caucasian. He came from a single parent household. It was just him and his mom. He never talked about his father.
Mm,
He wasn't, like after he finished high school, he did want to be an architect. He did enroll in Miami-Dade College. It didn't last long.
mm,
But before that, he was in and out of like the bad boy school that's now back on Galloway on 87th by the marina.
mhm.
It used to be a bad boy school, is what we'd call it. And, he was in and out of there having to shave his head every time he went in. And he would get arrested for different things. And he was heavily addicted to cocaine. It was just a mess, just a mess. There was no guidance that he had. Like, I never saw any male role models of any
Yeah.
kind in his life.
So where was his mom? Like,
She,
was she around? Was she?
yeah, she was. She would call my house looking for him if he was out too late. That's the thing, like, confused.
Mm,
Very many years of confusion, because how? Like, how does that happen?
mm,
Right? She would call the house to come looking for him. She would call if he wasn't home and wasn't at my house. She would still call and see if I've heard from him. She was a teacher. They lived in a really nice neighborhood in a nice home. I don't
hmm.
know.
That's very interesting. And you're since your parents did not know anything about what he was doing in the background and his lifestyle, whatnot, but there was no cell phones back then. She's calling the house. Who's picking up the phone call?
Yeah, it would be them or it would be me.
And they wouldn't question what's going on, why I guess she keeps calling to look for him, nothing like
No,
that.
it wasn't often. It wasn't like a back to back, but yeah, she would call. And I think my parents just got used to it. Because like I said, my dad really wanted me to stay rather than leave. So
Mm,
he installed a pool and got a trampoline and, did all the things to make sure that us kids would stay there as much as, until we couldn't take it anymore. And so several of my parents, I mean, my friends' parents would call the house and be like, hey, is so and so there? Or like, oh, she just left. And my friends would be there with my parents whether I was home or not. It's
hmm,
always it's always been that way.
wow.
Yeah.
And was there ever a time where he, I guess, maybe in a silent but creepy way, like just went up to you at any event and just gave you a threat or spoke to you in a very like I guess quiet yet aggressive way to make you feel intimidated or anything like that?
No, he played the card of loyalty. Like, you
Mm,
want to be with me, you're going to be loyal to me. And this is what loyalty looks like. And he wasn't really a confrontational kind of person. The most mad I ever saw him is when the Dolphins would lose.
oh
No,
wow.
seriously. And that's the thing. I'm really not trying to be funny, but it's seriously, he was not like an aggressor
Mm-hmm.
himself. He would make the threats, like he would make the comments that I mentioned of like, this is gonna affect your mom and it's gonna just put her over the edge, or you're gonna be the
What?
laughing stock of your dad, right? But it wasn't a threat. Where the threats and the aggression came from was the other guy. Very tall, dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
He was just my biggest fear for a long time. He would be the one, like, my trafficker would go take a shower,
Mm-hmm.
and he would be the one to come in discipline. And
Oh
he would be
damn.
in the shower with the music on, so I guess he
So
couldn't
pretty much he
hear.
ran the show with all of that, even though he was your direct, I guess, trafficker, but he was just in the background handling everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that because your trafficker wasn't, I guess, aggressive or didn't do such thing like the other person, that also made you continue with him?
Oh yeah, it just messed with my head because like, you were nice 80% of the time,
Mm,
right? I don't think it's nice to drop me off somewhere and tell me I'll be right back. So,
right.
but when I'm saying, when we were together, right? When
Mm,
we were hanging out, when we were just kicking it or playing spades, or just he introduced me to smoking weed at the time. So
mm,
I would just sit there and he would do what he needed to do and pass it to me. And if it was passed, I would take it because that's what I had to do, right? But once I guess I was trained
mm-hmm,
to be loyal to him, it was easy. It was just when I didn't comply, or when the person he set me up with wasn't happy, then then the other guy would get really aggressive.
that's very interesting. That I mean, just me thinking about that, that's messing with my mind. I'm like, you know,
That's
like
why, right?
that's
So
some psychological manipulation.
yeah, and for a
And then,
long
and you
time.
know, you have different, the different type of traffickers. If you can talk about real quick, what are the different type of traffickers that exist? Because you know, you have the CEO type of trafficker, the Romeo type of trafficker, like the
Yeah.
all the what is it? I forgot the others, but yeah, talk to us about all these different kinds.
So there are different ways to traffic. I was trafficked through the Romeo pimp, which is the boyfriend or girlfriend. It goes for both. There's also a way of being trafficked that I did without knowing, and it is by the bottom. Um,
Mm,
Traffickers that have had one of the girls for a long time, that person then becomes the bottom. And I say girls because this is normally, what I've seen.
mm-hmm,
And so that girl becomes the bottom because she's proven her loyalty. She's not going to mess up. She's going to make sure, more girls come in, things are taken care
mm,
of, everyone's, high and doing what they need to do. And so I would do that. I would traffic, and that bottom person, that is technically a trafficker, right?
mm,
Obviously, there are so many occasions where that bottom is manipulated and doesn't even know what's going on because their portion was like mine, like just getting the girls to want to come and hang out. And
mm-hmm,
once they're there, I get left out of every other conversation, right?
mm,
So there's that way. There is the CEO type, like you were saying. There is that man, that business owner, right? That needs an escort every once in a while.
mm,
And then that turns into an ongoing, much scarier situation. There is, well, we know there's labor trafficking, right? So holding your passports, normally your IDs, taking your money, not giving you the amount of pay that you need to have. A popular way too, and I know it's kind of considered the Romeo pimp, but it's the job opportunity type. right? So it's that
Like
person that,
the modeling agency and stuff
yes.
like that. Hmm.
Modeling agencies, music videos, makeup artists, beer girls, liquor girls, shop girls, strip
Hmm.
clubs. Man, so many, so
Wow.
many, just so many
Wow.
different ways.
That's just wild.
And
So,
familial, right?
oh yeah, yeah. And I always, I mean, growing up, or at least when I got into my adult years, I don't know what traffic it was. I just go based on the movie Taken and and other movies, and you see these stuff, and you be like, "Oh my god, that's a wild movie," and that's it. But we don't realize that it's happening in America. We think it's just China and all of India, third world country, but no,
Yeah,
it's happening in our backyard. Miami is number 5 in this as far as city in the whole country, and number 1 for Florida. Florida's number 3 in state in the whole country. Like this is
yeah,
happening in our backyard. This happened in your own neighborhood,
yeah.
you know, which is wild. So as throughout those years that you were with him, 12 years old and up, were there any changes in your behavior, the way you dressed, and all those things? Because you hear that a lot, and they talk about what are some signs that you can see when somebody is trafficked, and they talk about, oh yeah, the way they start dressing is different, certain behavior. So I guess for you, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So definitely my friend group kind of shifted. I had to get really good at lying. Man, there's so many years that I vaguely remember things because it was constantly a lie in my head and coming out of my mouth, and I needed to believe it. Right? Like if I came to school with a scratch, or if I had a bruise, or if I was out later, whatever it was, I had to lie and make sure my friends thought, I was living my best life and not the opposite. My clothes definitely changed. I went from, that rocker style, we'll say, to super preppy,
Mm-hmm.
to wanting to dress in like basketball shorts and like a V-neck.
Mm,
And my dad actually had a fit, and he was like, "You don't dress like a boy." And so from then on I challenged it. And so I would get the shortest of short skirts that I could possibly
mm,
find to see if that would make him react, and it didn't.
hmm,
And then that was just something my trafficker was like, "Oh, well, since you're gonna, piss off your dad in this way, it's working for me too," kind of thing. Um, and my attitude changed. Like there was a point where I had a full on panic attack because my mom would not let me leave because I
mm,
guess I made her mad for something I didn't do. And she wouldn't let me leave. And I was gonna miss an appointment and I was gonna get my ass whooped. And she would not, for nothing, just let me go. And I screamed so loud, like Exorcist movie loud, and had a full on shivering, rocking myself back and forth.
hmm,
And when she did find out, she was like, "Is that why? Like, is that why?" Because at the time, I thought you were just going freaking nuts.
hmm,
And so a lot of things that they noticed too were my attitude. I really didn't care about a lot of things, and as far as the house and family time and stuff. And I always wanted to have control of really everything else.
mm,
Like, I'll make dinner, or where are we going tonight? Oh, I want to pick, right? Just having to be the one that made the decisions whenever I possibly could was something that I would definitely, I needed control outside of what I couldn't control.
right, right. And what about your female friends in school, or your male friends? Like, did they, with besides the one that you were with here and there, but in general, did anybody in your friends, I guess, suspect anything?
So my male best friend at the time, he was the one that one day I slipped up and I was like, "Oh, I have an appointment," and he was like, "The hell do you mean you have an appointment?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing," and just like brushed it off, tried to talk about something else, but he kept on and kept on, and he kept like, I don't know, I guess he saw it for what it really was, or something was off, and just kept saying little things on like how he treats his girlfriend, and asking how my boyfriends treat me, and like um what I like out of relationships and what's healthy to me and what's okay and what's not okay, and trying to get me to hang out with him more, and setting up like kind of like play dates, like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with your other girlfriend, so and so, you want to come too?
Mm.
um and he just kept saying things, and finally he was like, look, Gloria, I don't know what's going on, I think this is what's going on. And I was like, yeah, maybe, but I don't really want to talk about it. And he was like, why don't you back away a little bit and see if he really loves you as much as you love him. And I was like, I don't know, we'll see. But by that time, my trafficker had a bunch of more girls. um he was even traveling to Alabama, so um I have suspicions that he was recruiting up there. I know he had a child that I had found out
Wow.
after. Yeah. He had a little boy after he passed away, because that's, I guess, the kicker for me is I didn't get to confront him.
Mm.
He was murdered in Alabama. um my one of my friends told me that he had been killed, and I didn't really believe him. This was my best friend that had told me on my 18th birthday, thinking that that was a nice birthday gift. I guess I didn't think so.
Hmm.
And I looked it up in the paper, and it was true. And I hadn't seen him in like 8 months at that point.
Oh wow.
um yeah, or no, less than like 6 months since I
Mm-hmm.
had seen him last. um and I had no idea about, obviously, him having a kid or him being in Alabama for whatever reason. um so yeah.
Interesting. So, at what point was the cutoff of all of that? That turning point in your life of
The
being
cutoff,
trafficked?
how? Oh, the traffic, okay.
Yes.
um my last time seeing him where something was asked of me, what I was like 17 and some change.
Hmm. 17 or 18. Wow. And he was obviously in his 20s already.
Yeah.
My gosh. Talk about adult and a minor together.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
man. So, okay, so he's out of the picture now because of what happened.
Hmm.
What's going on in your life after that? I mean, I'm sure that it's not just, okay, it's over. Now I can live my life.
All right. So I had been applying to colleges near and far. My trafficker had mentioned that he wanted to go a little north. He wanted to get out of Miami. So I didn't apply for any Miami schools,
Mm,
which, as a parent, right? Like, you want your kid to at least apply to one near you. But I didn't. I applied to some in Florida, but up North Florida, and then I applied to some all over the place that I wanted to go to in different states, just dreaming, I guess. And I got in to everywhere I applied, thank God.
wow.
Yeah. And so once he died, I was like, okay, I need to go. Like, I need
Mm,
to get the heck out of here. And just maybe I can, I don't know, reinvent myself, get out. So I picked Massachusetts and I went there. And I was having a great time just being a college kid, living in the dorms. It was a
mm-hmm,
totally different lifestyle for me. I got to just be, and that was really weird. And I remember one of my best friends here in Miami had nothing to do or know what was going on with me and my trafficker being trafficked. But she would always text me good night and good morning.
mm,
And I needed that because I was so used to being on call, I guess, right? That I needed something that still kind of eased me out of that because it was so
yeah.
cold turkey for me. So in college I started having flashbacks. Like, I would be in class and just all of a sudden zone out, like deer in headlights. And I started keeping track in my planner on how often they happened, for how long, if I could see the clock from where I was. um and then I was like, okay, I am studying social work, let me not be a hypocrite and go
Mm,
to therapy, right? Let's
mm-hmm.
figure this out. So I went and I spent 3.5 years
Damn.
fighting with my
My
therapist.
gosh.
And I say it that way because I can't explain it any other way. She kept telling me that I was trafficked, and I kept telling her that that was dumb.
Mhm.
and I wasn't in a cage. I wasn't going abroad. I had never been too far abroad. I went home. I hung out with my friends. I went to school. I got into college. I no, like just was very adamant on no until, you know,
Mhm.
probably a year and a half in, and I was like, okay, maybe this, but
Mhm.
not that, right? So now I'm just like bargaining, like, fine, this was considered trafficking, but this is not. And one thing that she made me realize is with the other guy, right, the tall guy that was the aggressor, um, he what I when I referred back to those thoughts, for me, he did rape me and he did sexually assault me and he
Mhm.
did put his hands on me and he did all of that. And I didn't give anybody else the blame until this point where she was like, why are you so like attacking him and seeing only him as the bad one
Mhm.
and not seeing how this was like a whole organized unit, girl? And I didn't see it for that. I didn't know what trafficking was. It was a lot of education. And then I admitted it, fully to myself out loud. Probably by like year 3 of therapy.
Wow.
Yes. And 6 months after that, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. And she was like, yeah, good, because we need to talk about discharge. And I was like, yay, right? Like, that's the best thing you want to hear after, because I would see her 3 times a week when I
Mhm.
first got there.
For 3 years.
That's why, like, at the beginning, the first few months, it was three
Mhm.
times a week because it was that bad. It was really bad. Yeah.
Wow. Do you keep in touch with her today or no?
No, she's passed away.
Um, sad.
Yeah, but she gave me a lot of therapy tools that
Mhm.
I still use and like redid, like revamped, updated, I guess, a little bit. And I use them a lot with my clients now.
And this is obviously many years ago. Not that you're old, but
Thanks.
it was many years ago that happened. So where are you now in your mind? Like, do you feel like you are completely healed, but are there still moments that you get triggered with certain things, with certain maybe certain places you go to, or you hear a certain word that some people say and it's not their fault, it's just from what you went through?
So, one thing was that I waited a long time to tell anybody. Right. So all my friends in Massachusetts, the people I lived with, right, like my
Mhm.
roommates, nobody knew. I came back down to Miami, nobody knew. I started working in social services, nobody knew. I finished my master's and I was like, okay, I still can't do this. I ended up taking different jobs. I finally got a job with Christie House with Project Gold. And I met the old director. Well, she's not old, but the previous director, she's not old at all. She's gorgeous. Maria Clara
Mhm.
Harrington. And one interview with her and Juliana at the time. And I was like, I want to be here. Like, I need to be here. And
Mm.
we were trying to work it out because what I was making was much more than what they were able to offer me. And so we met in a middle ground. I took a pay
Mhm.
cut. I had to drive twice as far now, but I needed to be there. And I didn't tell her there's a questionnaire if you go to Christie House and you apply, and it asks you if you were ever trafficked. And I put no. And so,
Mentirosa. No.
uh-huh. No, for real. And it's that, and it's because I knew that the moment I said it, a lot of responsibility came with it,
Yeah.
because people are going to ask, people are going to want to know, people are going to find out,
Mhm.
and I still had the little girl fear in me of like, oh my god, my parents, what are they going to think of me, right? And so when I was finally able to say it, it was for a radio interview, and
Um,
just kind of came out.
oh wow.
Yeah, and at that point I was like, oh my god, right? Kind of freaked out a little bit, had a full conversation with my parents. My dad was alive at the time, and I was like, listen. But he was very much, Gloria, if you're gonna say it because it's gonna be a better thing for other people.
Mhm.
And so I've made sure that as I tell my story, right, as you see, I'll laugh, I'll joke. I'm not saying I don't have a good time with it because I feel selfish saying I do have a good time telling my story,
Yeah.
but it's because I need people to know a different side of trafficking, and be informed. And like me and you have talked, I don't want to make anybody sad by it. I know that there's worse stories. I know
Right.
that I don't go into specific details, right? Because no one needs that.
Mhm.
What we need to do is just build awareness. And for me, just finally having the confidence to say it, was definitely after masters, after working in the field, after, you know, being able to handle that responsibility, and
Mhm.
being a mom to like, okay, now everyone's gonna know because we're gonna fix this world for this little girl.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. So you finally let it out that day in the radio station. I doubt your parents were listening, but you right there, you were like, okay, I think I have to tell them now because it's out in the open in the radio and people heard and this and that. So where does your parents come in? Because again, you said early on that you did not want to tell your father specifically,
Yeah.
given the work, the career that he was in. You didn't want him to feel the weight. I'm like, oh my, like he's the father. He should have known, or how he would react. He'll go crazy because some people they won't know, they won't react the right way, and they just go crazy, and
Yeah.
different things can happen, right? But
Yeah.
tell us that experience. Who did you tell first? Did you sit them down together, and how
Mhm.
did they both react?
So, I actually sat them down years before in college. My therapist made me write them a letter, and she said, write it like 15 times. And I was like, yeah, no, once will do. Big mistake. So if anyone ever tells you that, please at least get to the third. Because I wrote it once and it came out really harsh. It was so harsh. It was attacking my brother for him
Mm,
being the center of attention and me not getting enough attention and them not noticing what was going on because he was so caught up in crap, which was unfair, like unfair. And I just remember after telling them this, and at the time, I remember I didn't even say I was trafficked. I said I was raped and I was kidnapped and I was held hostage and all the things that put together being trafficking.
wow,
I still have the letter and it legit says
that's
in
crazy.
that order, like raped, hit, kidnapped, held hostage, etc. And I'm like, whatever. Anyways, so I told them that, and I just remember like this big bomb dropped. My
Mm,
mom's hysterical. My dad gets up, gets a cigarette, starts pacing back
oh
and
my
forth,
gosh.
asking questions. My brother's pissed with reason. It's not his fault. Um, and yeah, I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave now. And they were all like, well, I was like, yeah, I'm not your baby anymore. I just came home from college. I said this. You guys need to process. I'm out the door, and I
Mm,
left, and that was so selfish for them. But with the radio, it wasn't live, thank God. So I had time to call him up, and I told him, I was like, look, you remember that stuff I told you when I was younger that happened? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, some of that stuff is going to come out now, and I'm ready for it to come
mm,
out. And he's like, what are you doing? You have a child and blah blah blah. And I was like, listen, I need to do this. And he's like, okay. And that's when he said, if it's for the positive, then do it. So they did listen. They did see different things. They did know more so, right? The whole trafficking part of it, because I've never had the, we'll say, the guts to say
mhm.
that to my father. I have talked about it with my mom, but not with my dad. And then I hosted the A21 walk a couple years ago. It was 2 years ago, and all of my brothers were flying in or
Oh
driving
wow.
in to do the A21 walk with me. And I told them, I was like, look, I know we don't talk about this, and that's okay, but I'm going to do this and I'm hosting it. I'd really love for you to walk with me and my daughter,
Mm,
right? Because walking with my daughter in my city, right, with the Women's Fund and Women's Voice Network and Citrus and man, so many people. And he died the day before that walk.
wow. Wow.
And it was supposed to rain that day and it didn't. It didn't rain until everyone went home and I was picking up tables. And so I don't think, and it just goes back to the original thinking, I don't think he could have handled it
Mm,
emotionally, right? With his daughter being this because speaking all over the place, helping train law enforcement, giving my side of the story, and I don't think he could have handled that. And
Yeah, that guilt would have like destroyed him.
I think just God knew it was my time
Hmm.
to share, and that meant it was his time to go.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, there is a picture because your mom is an artist,
Yeah. Yes.
a great artist
She
from
is.
what I've seen last Friday. I want to share this picture. Okay, so talk to us about this image. This is so for those that give context, last Friday, because we know here in Miami it's or was Art Basel Week, and this past last Friday there was an event called Art Basel Human Trafficking Awareness Project, and it was by Victor and you, and there was a bunch of art all over the place and artists, and including a live finished project with amazing message. And there was a little section where it was all of your mom's, paintings. I mean, I don't know if that's just the ones that she has. I don't know if she has more, but
So many.
this was a very interesting drawing. So give us context and tell us, I guess, who this is and how long did it take us to do this and all that.
So yes, Victor Williams from Quest to Freedom had an amazing idea to do a human trafficking Art Basel event, which I think human trafficking gets to a lot of worlds now, right? Like we're starting to get into different places, but art is definitely one that I'm glad we're more in. And so we put this event on, like you said, and my mom being an artist, I was like, "Hey, you want to showcase your art?" And she's like, "Yeah, it sounds super fun." I was like, "Okay, here's the kicker." She's like, "What?" I was like, "My friend Victor wants you to paint a picture of how you feel about me being trafficked."
Hmm.
And she was like, "Huh?" Right. And so she was like, "I don't know. I need inspo, blah, blah, blah." And so my mom has MS, and that affects your memory and your bones and all kinds of stuff. But I had to sit down with her and really talk this through again. Right. Like, hey, remember this happened. And she was like, "But really?" And I'm like, "Yes, mom, really."
Hmm.
Right. And having to go through some of the situations so she could be like, "Oh, okay, I remember that, and I remember this." And I was like, "Can you just draw what you feel?" She
Hmm.
was like, "Okay." And so she said she started looking to see what she found, and she found different things and kind of put them together. But this is her interpretation, and so that's clearly me. We have the same hair color.
Yeah.
She made the eye black though. I don't have black eyes; they're blue, so knock there for mom. Just kidding. But no, she made a representation of what it was when I was younger. It was me, and then pulling my face away, and
Hmm.
behind it was this girl screaming, locked in a cage.
Mm.
And though I say that I was not locked in a cage, right? It
Mentally, psychologically, all of that, emotionally.
exactly. Yeah, that's what it was.
Wow. 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 Oh, Jesus. So, man. All right. So, wow. So, yes. And your mom is, if you don't mind sharing, how old is your mom? Because doing all that work, I mean, I know that work is probably years ago, but some of them feel recent, maybe. But
Yeah.
how old is she now?
She's still painting. She's literally painting right now. She's 74.
74. Wow. She's a year younger than my mom.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And she's still
She's still
moving and
going.
because I had a good time talking to her the other day, and she was just sharing her story of when she used to travel and as a single person before you and husband came into the picture.
Yeah.
It was a trip. She was awesome, and she did adopt me, so she didn't tell you that, but you don't have to deal with me then.
Yeah, but she's great, and she's always lived her life like that. Like we just need to smile and laugh more,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
however she does that, it's good.
yeah, that's awesome. So all of that, right? You you've been through what you've been through. You went to school and in denial that you were trafficked, and finally 3 years later, and now you went all these other times without working, but nobody's still knowing that you went through in Christie House, etc. And then now the radio, your mom, and the parents know everybody.
Yeah.
So now that all of that has happened, what are you doing now? Because I know you have something
Mhm.
called Taking the Girls Back. Talk to us about that.
Taking back the girls, yes. So in my master's, I created this program that was called, I wanted to call it Taking Back the Girls. And I've gotten so much crap because it's a long name and I get that, but I love what it stands for. And I knew that at some point I needed to come back to Miami from Massachusetts, even when I was getting my first degree. And I needed to come back and I needed to help save all the girls down here that are going through what I was going through. And for me, it's very much Miami culture.
Mm-hmm.
Just besides the over sexualization, we just grow up a lot faster down here, guys and girls. We're a different breed, and that's dangerous. I've seen, especially when you go to other states, which
Yeah.
and it's like yes, they have their own things, but it's not as sexual, man. And maybe it's just because we don't have winter, so we don't have a time frame where we need to dress up.
Right.
I don't know. But but yeah, so this program is really special to me. With it, I get to go and do presentations, which you've heard me speak at, and speak at different places, not only giving my testimony, but just information on human trafficking and awareness on it, and what are the trends. From the state attorney's office, I the first time I really shared like my whole story was at the state attorney's um, human trafficking forum 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, one of the advocates, Tanya Janusa, really she was holding my hand pretty much the whole time, to make sure that I had the strength to do that and then to continue.
Yeah.
And since she's pushed me to speak, I've reached almost 2,000 teens.
Wow.
And that's not including these, right? Like podcasts, I don't count, but just
Mm-hmm.
presentations in person or like a Zoom where I can count, how many teens are there. I'm at like 18 and some change. And that's crazy to me. And parents too. I've been able to host sessions. Last year, we did the Daughters Project where I brought teen girls and their parents, split them up, give them two different types of presentations, same topic, just,
Mm-hmm.
one for parents,
Yeah.
one for, and then brought them all together. And now, I mean, I have private clients through Taking Back the Girls. We do workshops on empowerment and independent living skills. And it's way more than just self-esteem and self-worth, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like how to communicate in a healthy way, not just with your boyfriend or girlfriend, but like with everyone. And how to express yourself in a healthy way. And how, do we do financial knowledge, right? And management. And what I did is I went backwards and I looked at, okay, these are all the reasons that girls are typically trafficked, right? They're looking for love. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have good role models. They are down and out and they need to trade sex for stay, right? Or they have an addiction. And so I developed a curriculum that fits fills those gaps early on so that if you are down and out, some ways, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
resources that you can go to. You don't have to just go to like hitting a lick, right?
Yeah.
Or exchanging of some sorts or selling yourself. Like there's other things you can do. And so that's my focus with Taking Back the Girls. And this just branched off from the first nonprofit that I did, which was
Mm-hmm.
Tree of Life. And Tree of Life is made to have essential items for parents and children who need it. And with that one, I've dressed survivors that needed it and their kids and court clothes and pregnancy tests and Plan B and all the things. So I think it's a good balance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You
Yeah.
also were involved in a project that you did last year. I don't know if you did it this year and maybe the numbers are not there yet, but something with bears
Haha.
and donations. Talk to us about that. I'm gonna put a picture so people can see it.
Yes.
Um, but what is? I mean, I saw that and I'm like, how did you manage to get all those bears? I know the way it worked, but people are like,
Literally.
what? What are you talking about? Go ahead, let us know
Yeah.
what was that about.
All right. So I had to be completely transparent. I had an assignment for class. Then I had to again doctor it and I had to come up with a campaign. I was like, what the hell am I gonna do? There's human trafficking campaigns everywhere, right? It happens here.
Mm-hmm.
Blue campaign. The state attorney's office has her campaign, right? It's just so many things.
Yeah.
Um, And I was like, all right, I need to do something. I want to do a shocker. I want to shock everyone. And I was like, okay, let me just come up with a name first, something that's clever. And after throwing garbage
Mm.
phrases at my boyfriend and my friends, I finally got one, and it's too much to bear. And I think that fit perfectly. And then I was like, okay, what can I do with this number? So I started looking up statistics. And for my doctorate, I am focusing on sex trafficking of minors in Florida specifically, specifically South Florida. And so I
Mhm.
started looking stats, right? Um, and narrowing it down as best I could. And what I found that was crazy to me is through the DCF hotline. So the abuse and neglect hotline that you would call in anything, right? You would
Mhm.
call in if you saw something, you would call in if you needed help, you would call in like teachers, doctors, whoever, call in abuse and neglect on children. It's not a trafficking hotline.
Mhm.
And yet they had over 2,000 verified cases of trafficking in Florida. So I was like, what
Wow.
the F? So I dug a little deeper, and in that report, it said that of those in those 2,000 plus cases, there was 1,627 children involved. And I was like, ah, nah, this is what we're gonna do. Too much to bear. I'm gonna raise that many bears, collect that many.
Mm.
We're gonna set them up, and we're gonna shock everyone. Um, and I had like 3 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. And thankfully, I think at the end, my professor extended it like a week because I was like, "Look, I haven't gotten to the amount yet." Um, but yeah, we had to. It had to be a video campaign, so I knew I had to display it, and so I started taking videos of the bears we collected, asking everyone. You won't imagine how many stuffed animals people have that are not bears.
Mm.
It was right after Valentine's Day, so I was like, "Give me all your you just got it from your sweetheart. That's nice. Pass it over. I'll hand it back."
Mhm.
And I got on TV. We even made CBS News for Too Much to
Oh
Bear.
wow.
Yep. And we hit a bunch of different outlets. I was on Gloria's Gab Live for Miami Community Newspaper, and just so many things. They really came out of the woodworks. The Women's Club of Coral Gables, the Lions Club,
Mm.
everyone to come help. I had students collecting. And yeah, we got all the bears we needed, which was insane. I don't know if you've ever counted 1,627 bears, but it's a challenge. And I called up St. Thomas University, and I was like, hey, we've done stuff together before. You have a law school, one of the only law schools that has a human trafficking
Oh
academy.
wow.
I need to do this there.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'll pause there if you want, because that's a big thing. Like, we have a school here in South Florida that has a human trafficking academy
I
for
didn't
law.
know that. Wow.
It just prepares them from the start, right?
Right. That is awesome. Yeah, I definitely gotta look into that story because when I saw that picture, I was like, oh man, that's beautiful. Like the message behind it and all that.
Yeah,
Man,
they
that is.
uh they let us do it right in front of the law school. I got some big old numbers, which you'll see in the picture, right? The 1627. And I kept telling Vic, I was like, I need people to not forget this number. Like, I need
Yeah.
this number to be engraved.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, I got flyers with QR codes. I set up tripods to get people's reactions. And we did, St. Thomas has a little walkway towards where we were, and I set up bears with a little sign, and one of those catchy signs, so it's like two words, and then you got to get to the bear to get the next two and the next two, and just to get them to the
Mm-hmm.
display. And it was pretty
Wow.
beautiful. Yeah.
That is that is awesome. I love that. Keep doing that. All the work that you're doing because it's
Yeah.
needed, and it takes a village, community, people to work together, not just people who are survivors, but
Yeah.
people like me who are, a father of two kids and obviously never been through any type of trafficking, but has a heart for people,
Yeah.
and advocate for those that can't speak, a voice to the voiceless. So that's awesome. So as we're getting to a close, I wanted to ask, now that you are a mom
Mm.
of three girls,
Yeah.
three girls, not even one boy,
I know.
three girls, and given what you went through, I guess, what message would you share to all moms that have boys, little boys or girls, or even teenagers, given what that you went through?
Yeah. I always say to the parents, do not excuse teenage behavior for teenage behavior. Because though we grew up in a different era,
Mm-hmm.
the teenage behavior looks the same in a lot of ways. And building trust within your kids to tell you things is important. My littles, I mean, my oldest is 8.
Mm.
So I'm particular on other things like with them right now. For example, from the time they were little, they called female and male private parts what they are.
Mm-hmm.
There's no funny word for it. Just being a former DCF employee, right? You're not going to confuse the worker by
Right.
thinking, someone gave you a cookie when that's not the cookie you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about. So big on that. And then with the girls, I don't tell them what I do, right? But I do share that I help parents and kids learn things that they need to, and that there are bad people out there.
Mm.
And I had my 5-year-old challenge me recently. She has never done this, but she hid herself in a parking lot from
Oh
me.
wow.
And me having gone through all the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And knowing all the stats I do, in my head, I had a panic attack. It was probably like 10 seconds, maybe 30. In my head, it felt like a year. And I just screamed her name and she came around the corner laughing. And I was like, dude, like there's bad people in the world that'll take you. And she's like, no, they won't, mommy. And I was like, oh, right. So, so now we had to have a whole different kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just from an early age, being finding a way to tell them that there are bad people that they might still encounter in life, and these people aren't necessarily going to have like an ugly face or a weapon that they can see, right? It could just be, other kids that are being a bad influence or being bullies or anything like that. But I think just getting them to in their mind start looking at red flags,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not just in trafficking, but in everything. Like,
Yeah.
oh, every time around Susie, she talks to me a little mean and then she gets all
Mm.
mad and runs away, right? Like starting to identify what are good qualities in people and what aren't. So that it's easier when they get older to be like, remember, we've talked about red flags your whole life. And not think that everyone's just gonna be nice and not,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
that would be my advice.
Awesome. And where can people find you? They want to know more about what you do and all that stuff.
So for the nonprofit would be the easiest way. So it's a little long, but it's easy, I think. For Taking Back the Girls, it is just that. It is all one word on Instagram, Taking Back the Girls. And then for the parenting center, right, with the essential items, it's Tree of Life
Mm.
underscore center on Instagram. And both of those you can find me there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come in and share your story. I always tell the people that I interview, those that are survivors of human trafficking, that this is not just your story. This is a story of many others that are afraid to speak up, are voiceless, and they have a muzzle, a psychological muzzle, and they can't speak up. So I applaud you for continue being bold and being used, for the greater good of other people. So, and we definitely will be connected more because
Yeah.
this is what we're all about, right? We're all doing this together. We're
Yeah.
not our own little island. So that is awesome. So I appreciate you, Gloria, and everybody else. I hope you guys enjoyed, um, this testimony, and that you can share it with others. And if you are one that is going through this or have been through this and not said anything, um, find an avenue to speak up. I understand, or actually, I won't understand because I don't know how it feels, but I can understand why you may not want to speak up yet, but there are people out there that can guide you. And Gloria is one of those people, among
Yeah.
many others.
There's also the hotline 305 Fix Stop. I know all three of the women that would pick up the phone. You get a live person, and they are really sweet.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Well, my friends, have a good night. Stay tuned for the next interviews.